Curiosity AIs. Roman Civil Wars. The civil war between Caesar's assassins and the Second Triumvirate, the struggle for Rome's future. In 44 BCE, the Roman Republic was plunged into chaos following the assassination of Julius Caesar. He had been declared dictator perpetuo, dictator for life, and his immense power terrified many senators who feared the end of the Republic and the rise of a monarchy. The plot to kill him was orchestrated by a group of senators who called themselves Liberatores, the Liberators, led by Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus. They saw themselves as the saviors of the Republic, but in reality, Caesar's death opened the door to more conflict, triggering a civil war that would shape Rome's destiny. The assassination took place on the Ides of March, 44 BCE, when Caesar was stabbed 23 times on the floor of the Roman Senate. Brutus, who had once been a close friend and protege of Caesar, justified the act as a defense of the Republic against tyranny. But the assassination did not bring the peace or the return to republican values that the Liberatores had hoped for. Immediately following Caesar's death, Rome was in shock. The assassins believed that they would be hailed as heroes, but the reality was far more complex. Caesar's supporters, particularly among the people and soldiers, saw the assassination as a betrayal. Instead of unifying Rome, the murder deepened divisions. The people mourned Caesar, especially after Mark Antony, one of Caesar's loyal allies, gave a rousing funeral speech. Antony's words inflamed the crowd and turned popular sentiment against Brutus, Cassius, and the other conspirators. At this critical moment, Mark Antony took control of Caesar's will, which revealed an unexpected development. Caesar had posthumously adopted his grandnephew, Gaius Octavius, as his son and heir. Octavius, a young man of just 19 years old, had been studying in Greece at the time of Caesar's death, but his arrival in Italy would soon change the course of Roman history. Renamed Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus, Octavian, he stepped into the political scene determined to claim his inheritance. The political situation in Rome quickly escalated. On one side were the Liberatores, led by Brutus and Cassius, who fled Rome to gather support in the eastern provinces. They saw themselves as the champions of republicanism, but many Romans viewed them as murderers who had betrayed Caesar. On the other side were the Caesarians, led by Mark Antony, Octavian, and Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, another of Caesar's loyal generals. Though Octavian and Antony initially distrusted each other, they realized that their personal ambitions would have to be set aside to defeat a common enemy, the Liberatores. In 43 BCE, Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus formed the Second Triumvirate, a formal political alliance sanctioned by the Senate with near-absolute power to restore order in Rome. This alliance was different from the informal First Triumvirate of Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. The Second Triumvirate had official legal standing and was granted the authority to rule Rome as a collective dictatorship. The Second Triumvirate's first act was to eliminate opposition in Rome. They initiated proscriptions, essentially state-sponsored death lists, targeting their political enemies. One of the most notable victims was Cicero, the famous orator and statesman who had criticized Antony. Cicero's death sent a message: the triumvirs were determined to crush any opposition. Meanwhile, Brutus and Cassius were raising armies in the eastern provinces. Brutus had taken control of Macedonia, while Cassius secured Syria and other parts of the eastern Roman world. They gathered a formidable force, including veterans from Caesar's own legions who had switched sides, as well as local troops from allied kings. The Liberatores saw the eastern provinces as their power base, and they knew they would have to meet the triumvirs in battle sooner or later. By 42 BCE, the stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of Rome. Both sides understood the stakes: if Brutus and Cassius triumphed, they would restore the Republic. If Antony and Octavian won, they would solidify their control and perhaps pave the way for the Roman Empire. In the summer of 42 BCE, the armies of the Second Triumvirate, led by Antony and Octavian, marched east to face the forces of Brutus and Cassius. The two armies met near the town of Philippi in Macedonia. This battle would become one of the largest and most decisive conflicts of the Roman civil wars. The combined forces of Brutus and Cassius numbered around 80,000 men, while the triumvirs commanded a slightly larger force of around 100,000. However, Octavian was still inexperienced in military matters, and Antony was the true military commander of the triumvirs. On the other side, both Brutus and Cassius were skilled leaders, but they lacked the unity that Antony's army had. The Battle of Philippi was actually fought over the course of 2 engagements. In the first battle, which took place in early October 42 BCE, Cassius' forces were caught off guard by Antony's aggressive tactics. Though Brutus managed to defeat Octavian's legions in a fierce clash on the other side of the battlefield, Cassius mistakenly believed the battle was lost and, in despair, committed suicide. His death left Brutus to command the remaining forces alone. Despite the loss of Cassius, Brutus was determined to fight on. He regrouped his forces and prepared for a final stand against the Triumvirs. The second battle took place a few weeks later, in late October 42 BCE. Antony's legions once again showed their superior discipline and tactics, while Octavian's forces, despite their earlier defeat, were bolstered by reinforcements. Brutus' army was worn down by hunger and fatigue, and Antony capitalized on this. In a decisive move, he outflanked Brutus' forces, surrounding them on all sides. The fighting was brutal, with neither side willing to give up easily. But as the day wore on, Brutus realized that defeat was inevitable. Refusing to be captured by his enemies, Brutus committed suicide, just as Cassius had done. With the deaths of Brutus and Cassius, the Liberatores were completely defeated. The civil war was over, and the Second Triumvirate had emerged victorious. Antony and Octavian now controlled the Roman world, but their victory came at a cost. The Republic, as it had existed for centuries, was dead. The dream of a republic ruled by the Senate and the people of Rome was gone, replaced by the reality of a new form of government. In the immediate aftermath, Antony and Octavian divided the Roman territories between them. Antony took control of the eastern provinces, while Octavian ruled the west. Lepidus, the third member of the Triumvirate, was given control of Africa but would soon be sidelined as a minor player in the political landscape. For the moment, Antony and Octavian were allies, but their partnership would not last. The death of Caesar's assassins had removed one set of rivals, but the rivalry between Antony and Octavian would soon erupt into another civil war, ultimately leading to the fall of the Triumvirate and the rise of Octavian as Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The war between Caesar's assassins and the Second Triumvirate marked the definitive end of the Roman Republic. The defeat of Brutus and Cassius at Philippi in 42 BCE signaled the death of the last serious opposition to Caesar's political legacy. From this point forward, Rome would be ruled by a single man. Though Octavian's rise to power would not be immediate, the seeds of the Roman Empire were sown in the fields of Philippi. Octavian, as Caesar's adopted son, understood that the Roman world could no longer be governed by the old republican system. The centralization of power in the hands of one man, which had begun under Julius Caesar, would be fully realized under Octavian as Augustus. The legacy of the Civil War and the rise of the Roman Empire would shape not only the history of Rome but the history of the Western world. Rome would go on to dominate the Mediterranean for centuries, leaving a profound impact on law, governance, military strategy, and culture. The end of the Republic marked the beginning of a new era, one that would see Rome reach the height of its power under the rule of emperors. The assassination of Julius Caesar, intended to save the Republic, had instead brought about its final collapse. In the end, it was Caesar's vision of centralized power that prevailed, and the world would never be the same. Thanks for watching. If you like this content, please consider subscribing.